the importance and history of money. Good morning, afternoon, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about money, how it works, how it has evolved, and most importantly, how it plays a central role in shaping the economies of the world. I'll be honest with you, there are a lot of misconceptions about money. And the truth is, if you really want to understand how the world functions, you need to understand the role of money in society. Milton Friedman, a brilliant economist, once said, "The government solution to a problem is usually as bad as the problem." Today, we'll look at how the evolution of money is not just about technology or government intervention, it's about the free market and the forces that have shaped money into what it is today. And we'll see how individual choice has always been at the center of this process. The origins of money, barter system. To understand the importance of money, we need to start at the beginning. Around 3000 BC, societies relied on a barter system. This meant you would exchange goods directly. Perhaps you'd trade a cow for some grain. Now, while this sounds simple, the barter system had significant limitations. Friedman would argue that markets work best when people are allowed to make their own choices without interference, but in a barter system, you are limited by the double coincidence of wants, meaning that in order to make an exchange, both parties have to want exactly what the other has to offer. This isn't just inconvenient, it's inefficient. The first step toward money, commodity money. As we move forward, humanity began to recognize the need for something that would facilitate trade more effectively. And so we moved to commodity money, goods like cattle, grain, or even shells. These commodities had inherent value and were accepted by all. They solved the problem of finding someone who had what you wanted and needed what you had. Yet, even commodity money had its limitations. It was cumbersome, not easily divisible, and you certainly wouldn't want to carry around a herd of cattle when you went shopping. Efficiency banned on markets is vital, and commodity money simply wasn't efficient enough. The first coins, Lydia, 600 BC, enter coins, the breakthrough that fundamentally changed the way humans traded. Around 600 BC, the kingdom of Lydia, modern-day Turkey, minted the first coins made of precious metals, gold and silver. The innovation here was simple. Coins were portable, standardized, and valuable by themselves. Friedman was a staunch advocate of the free market, and when coins were introduced, they did exactly what Friedman would argue a good market solution should do. They made trade more efficient. Coins were easy to carry, their value was understood, and they simplified transactions across regions. Coins were the beginning of what we now call money, and they were a critical step in the evolution of economic systems. The role of money in a free society. So let's pause and consider the role of money. Money doesn't just represent wealth, it represents choices. Milton Friedman argued that when individuals have the freedom to choose, economic systems work more efficiently. By adopting coins, societies gave people the freedom to engage in trade more efficiently, without waiting for the perfect barter match. The introduction of coins was a market-driven solution, and that's something we should not overlook. Our money is, at its core, a tool that facilitates the exchange of goods and services, allowing individuals to maximize their opportunities. And as we'll see, this freedom and efficiency are what drive economies forward. The rise of paper money, China, 7th century. Let's move forward to 7th century China. Now we see the introduction of paper money, a completely new innovation. It was lighter, more portable, and still backed by precious metals. This system helped trade move faster across great distances, particularly along the Silk Road. But here's the key. Paper money was a government-backed solution. Milton Friedman was cautious about government intervention in markets. Paper money backed by governments worked in theory, but it also introduced new complexities. The value of paper money wasn't tied to something tangible, but instead to the trust people had in the government. And as we know from history, when that trust is lost, inflation happens. Friedman often warned about the dangers of inflation, a process that occurs when governments create money without real backing. In this way, paper money, while useful, introduced risks that could destabilize economies. The 20th century, the rise of banking and credit. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we see the rise of credit. Credit allows us to borrow money and pay for things later. It fundamentally changes the way we think about money because it separates the ability to buy something from the ability to pay for it immediately. Friedman argued that credit and debt were tools that should be regulated, but also left to the market forces. Too much credit, unchecked, can lead to economic instability, and too little credit stifles growth. This balance between freedom and regulation is what defines modern economies. Digital money and cryptocurrencies. Now, we're in the digital age. We've moved from paper money to digital transactions, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are emerging. These are digital, decentralized currencies that don't rely on any central authority like a bank or government. This is a return, in a way, to a more free market system, one that isn't controlled by institutions. Friedman would probably argue that competition in money, having multiple types of currency that individuals can choose from, is a good thing. It encourages efficiency and reduces the government's control over the economy. However, he'd also likely raise concerns about the volatility of cryptocurrencies and how they could undermine stability. Money, inflation, and government control. Friedman's ideas on money weren't just about understanding history, they were about how money is controlled today. The issue of inflation, when money loses its value because there's too much of it, was a major focus of his work. He argued that government should avoid manipulating money to solve short-term problems. He was a big proponent of monetary policy, but focused on stability, not inflation. Money isn't just about convenience, it's about control. When governments control money, they also control economic stability. And that's a dangerous game to play. The evolution of money in free markets. So let's wrap up. Money has evolved from simple bartering to a complex system of coins, paper money, credit, and cryptocurrencies. Along the way, the introduction of new forms of money has made trade more efficient, but it's also introduced risks. Milton Friedman believed that free markets work best when governments don't interfere, and money should reflect that efficiency, trust, and stability. The future of money, however it unfolds, will rely on these principles. Governments and individuals will need to understand the balance between freedom and control, and that's where the real challenge lies. Questions and discussion. Thank you for your attention. Let's open up the floor for questions. What do you think about the role of government in controlling money? How do you see the future of cryptocurrencies? Let's discuss.